This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I am your host, Mike Rapin, and joining me this week, four feisty foes flailing furiously for fun, Zach McCrary.
What's happening?
Our good friend Danny.
Hello, everyone.
And the one and only Nick White.
Yes, and Mike is definitely saying, thank God there's only one. Yes.
Yes, I am. I'm very happy that you're the only Nick White that I know. Before we start this episode, I want to say a couple things. First off, this is episode 400 of I Read Comic Books. And it somehow, coincidentally, I promise I did not fudge the numbers too much to make this happen. This is also the 9th anniversary episode of I Read Comic Books, and I simply can't believe that. That is 8 years of I Read Comic Books. This is starting the 9th year. We've been doing this show since 2015, and it feels like I'm still 25, 26 years old. I'm not actually. That's what it turns out to be. But this is an incredible achievement. I'm very excited to get into it. But we have to talk about comic books. And one other small announcement, kind of a big announcement. I do want to apologize to everybody. A couple weeks back, we did say we were going to be going to Emerald City Comic Con this upcoming year. Due to a bunch of things very much out of our control, that is not actually going to happen because of a myriad of circumstances. I'm very, very sorry if you purchased tickets in advance to go to this because we were going. I don't know how many of you out there did, but unfortunately, we just can't make it. The IRCB crew just can't make it happen this year. We may try to go to another convention later this year. I will get serious hardcore confirmation if we do, and I'll let you folks know as soon as we know, but just wanted to throw that out there just as soon as possible because we just really figured that out this past week. But we're here to talk about comic books. We're here to do the thing that we do every single week, and we've been doing on this show for 8 years, going on 9, and that is talk about comic books. So I have to ask you two legally mandated questions. That is, how have you been? How have comic books been? I'm going to kick things over to, I think, Zach. You're the first person on my list. Zach, let's start with you.
That's me. Yeah,
Okay.
man. Everything's been pretty solid. Everything's coming up Millhouse in life. And this month's been pretty wild. I've read 114 comics, like 26 different series, because on my show, I've been doing a New Year's comic spree trying to catch up on 2023 books.
I've been following some of that. I didn't actually do the math. That is an incredible number of comic books. Holy shit,
It's been insane. Yeah, I did it to have like a chill month of like catching up, but then I was like, I just want to read all of them. It's been so many.
Chill month.
Yeah.
Chill month, he says. It's January 21st.
I think you and Merriam-Webster might need to sit down and review what chill means.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
This feels like Greg Turkington's like a film a day or whatever, 500.
Yeah, 500 films in 500
Yeah.
days. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Zach, you read 114 books. Tell us about one, maybe.
Yeah, so
Good
one
luck.
of the books that I read that I really enjoyed, it was one that I started back, like when it first dropped early in the year and never came back to because that's what happens. It was Behold Behemoth from Boom Studios. I read all 5 issues, written by Tate Broomball, art by Nick Robles, letters by And World Design. So like I said, it's only 5 issues. It's a very easy read with great pacing. Stories got a lot of ground to cover in 5 issues. And though I wouldn't have minded seeing it get a few more issues to really flesh out this world we're in and see these characters surviving in it, Broomball like deftly moves along, and it never feels disjointed or rushed as we go between before the fall story and the after the fall story, because we're following this social worker named Grayson, who is at his estranged police officer brother's funeral, and dude has been having these like massive headaches and terrible dreams, and he seems to be hanging on a thread. And one of his cases, because like I said, he's a social worker, is this little girl named Ren who's being abused by her foster father. And when Grayson, he finds her at the center of a murder, the dominoes kind of start quickly falling and show that she is directly connected to the problems he's having. And so
Okay.
yeah, it's wild. And so there's Before the Fall. That story is where we get filled in on what exactly is happening to Grayson and Ren and how they're connected to one another, and which is pretty crazy and very much a part of what leads to an apocalypse that gives us the After the Fall story, and it kind of goes back and forth. And the After the Fall story introduces like a broken earth plagued with like demons and these giant creatures called behemoths who destroy as much as the demons do, but seem to be fighting them. And at the core of it, always being hunted, are Grayson and Ren, who are actually trying to find the place where it all started and trying to save the world. It's wild. They do all this all in 5 issues.
So light, easy breezy read, great for some downtime.
Yep, real chill.
The Joe pair of comic books, right? Put you to bed.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, just something mild to relax to.
Now, isn't this the author who worked with Lemire on a couple of the Black Hammer books?
I believe so.
The Barbarian, I think it's called.
I believe so.
The Barbarian, Barbarian. I don't
Barbarian?
Barbarian.
John Steinbeck?
Yeah.
John
Yes.
Steinbeck.
John Steinbeck. He's also working on the Christopher Chaos book over at Dark Horse with James Tynion and
oh yeah,
which is a lot of Tate Brumbo is a great talent. But I will say, Zach, I have read this book as well, and every time I look at Nick Robles' art, I think, is he the best artist working right now? Like,
it's so good.
It's so good.
It's so detailed, and it's man, there are some splash pages of this broken earth that are just gorgeous.
I did a quick Google search for Nick Robles because I'm not super familiar with his work, and Google Images wanted to just show me mostly half-naked men because he's drawn some very fan favorite characters such as Nightwing and Gambit, and Nightcrawler, mostly naked, as covers for different books. So I guess those are some good looking men, and Nate Robles definitely nailed it.
I never thought about seeing Nightcrawler dangle. That's an interesting thing.
I mean, we don't get the full dangle. We just get, a hint at dangle.
Oh,
but,
okay. Just a quick bamf away dangle.
Yeah, very, very close. Danny, we're going to move on. How about you? How have comic books been? How have you been?
I've been doing very well. We survived the freeze of 2024 over in Texas.
Okay.
We were stuck at home for a couple of days by choice, really, because there was not a lot of precipitation. We just don't like it when it's cold, and we're not ready
all the way
for
out in the desert.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So, but it was a great time to catch up on comics. There's some stuff that I've been really excited for. There's a lot of stuff that I've been reading. Not on the level of Zach, because I also watch movies, so I don't have time to do that. But the one thing I want to talk about today, it's Cobra Commander #1 from Image Skybound. God. This is the next addition to the Energon universe. Now, for anyone watching on Twitch, I'm gonna show you because I got the blank cover, and then I got the main cover, and then I got one more cover because I love it.
I like how Danny says for anyone watching on Twitch, and then he shows us a blank sheet of paper almost immediately.
I thought that was a joke. I thought that was a bit.
I thought that was so good. I was like, Danny.
Well, this is the before, right? So whenever convention season hits around here in Dallas, then I'll have somebody draw me a nice Cobra Commander to get into that. But let's talk about the book because it was fantastic. This is written by Joshua Williamson with art by Andrea Milana, colors by Annalisa Leone, letters by Russ Wooten. Which Russ Wooten, I think he's pretty much lettering everything over at Skybound. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, seems like it.
This is another miniseries. So there are 2 miniseries for G.I. Joe stuff. One's the Duke miniseries. This is the other book. The rise of Cobra begins here in a world where the Cobra organization has informed one man's sinister plan to utilize the mysterious alien substance known as Energon sends shockwaves across the globe. Who is Cobra Commander? Where does he come from? And what horrors is he planning to unleash that will rock the world and maybe the universe to its core? So go ahead, Mike.
They're also dealing with Energon in the G.I. Joe books too. Oh,
yep. Energon is fueling this whole universe, Mike, literally and figuratively.
I'm just so mad because honestly, I thoroughly enjoyed all of Void Rivals, and I just have no interest in picking up any of this other stuff.
Nick, they're so good.
They're so good.
Before we get into that,
these are wholly unbiased opinions too. I'm sure that
Danny, tell us what you liked about this book before Nick starts to just tear it down from the get go.
So I've never read a Cobra book, and I've read very little G.I. Joe. I've read, I'm sure I've watched, other than those awful movies that we got in the early aughts. I don't know much about G.I. Joe, so this was a whole new thing. But the book does a really good job at being very welcoming to a new audience. It really dives into the lore. It talks about how ruthless Cobra Commander is. We get a little bit into his backstory into the deep lore of Cobra Law, which is like the land where he comes from, which
What?
I think it's a play on Shangri-La.
Yeah.
Seems
Um,
legit.
Sure.
but I don't know. G.I. Joe fans, please let us know somewhere in the chat. Send Mike an email. Like
Yeah.
I know very little. There is a noise that when some of the people that live in Cobra Law are revolting, they yell like Cobra la 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 la. You just see like that across big letters, which I found very funny. But it also expands the Energon universe. Like I won't go into spoilers because I think that's a really neat surprise. Although if you
Mhm.
have seen the Skybound YouTube channel, they kind of spoil the surprise themselves when they drop the
Sure.
trailer.
Classic publisher moment.
Yeah, but it's a lot of fun. Like I like that it's a standalone thing for sure. Like if you just want to read about Cobra Commander and how messed up he is, because the book,
Mhm.
it's if you read the preview pages, it's very messed up. Like the colorist is using all the red ink they have on their palette.
I see.
But yeah, really cool character designs. Everything in Cobra La has a really nice coloring too, because it feels alien. So I don't know if it's within Earth, if it's a different dimension. I don't really know, and I don't think we
Mhm.
got the full answer in this first issue. But I'm sure there's other people that are yelling like, "Oh, you should already know this" or whatever. But listen, I'm a new fan to this, so but I love it nonetheless. So all the books are really good. Transformers, Duke, this one. I'm actually behind on Void Rivals because it is the most disconnected book
Mm.
of all these. So, but yeah,
That's what I've heard too.
highly recommend it. You don't have to pick up as many variants as I did, but there's some really good ones. If anybody finds the David Mack one, like you struck gold. So, but let's see. What about you, Nick? What have you been reading? How you been?
Yeah, things have been good. West Michigan Weather Watch would be snow is made snow is done for now. I think between last Friday, I mean like roughly like 10 days ago, last Friday and now we had maybe, oh god, I don't know, maybe 20 inches of snow total altogether.
Mhm.
So I'm glad to not be dealing with that. Just finished watching the Lions beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so now I've gone and dated the show. Mike will be very happy to hear that.
I mean, we dated it with the numbers, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fine. It's fine.
So a couple people from the show watched along on Twitch. That was fun. Thanks everybody for joining, Danny included. I'm not going to say anything about the next game. I'm not going to make any sort of predictions. Just hesitantly optimistic. I'm not going to jinx anything. I'm not putting anything on the written audible record for people to come back to about that. So we'll leave that
Okay.
where it is.
We'll see if the AI overlords disagree with you in 6 weeks after this transcript gets processed. So.
But I read Arbone's Dust #2. I'm just gonna say it. I firmly believe we're in January. This is gonna be
Mhm.
one of the best issues of the year. I'm already
wow.
saying that hands down.
Yep.
If you thought issue #1 was weird and mysterious, issue #2 basically fucking flips the script and says like what you think you know may not be true. And I'm gonna
Mhm.
tiptoe around a bunch of this. Obviously, this is Ben Stenbeck, fresh off of Our Mice and Men, fresh off of Travels with Charlie. He established novelist who then died and then came back and wrote comics. That's a nice callback, everyone.
No, not
I see
at
what you
all.
did there.
Yep.
Not at all. Just it's a
Anyway,
different guy. It's a
Dave
different
Stewart on
guy.
colors, Russ Wooten on letters. Again, these two are on every book. I know we already covered a Russ Wooten book. Here's another Russ Wooten book.
Mhm.
Couple thoughts. Stenbeck draws oversized mutated lizards really well. Just saying it. They look
Agree.
great. Amazing issue. Great piece of storytelling. If it sounds nebulous, you really need to read this for yourself. If you're reading this book and you haven't gotten to this issue yet, just get pumped. Read this book now. Stenbeck continues to be an absolute master of non-verbal storytelling. If you need any
Totally.
proof, just look at the scene where our protagonist kills the lizard and then looks to its young, and then the way he just sort of looks like aghast and he sort of curls up in the fetal position and nothing is said. And you get this really interesting moment where you suddenly realize you're dealing with a guy who just despite the brutal setting he's in, like he doesn't relish killing. In fact, he doesn't even seem comfortable with it. And again, that's just really weird when you look at all of the other people we've been introduced to in this universe,
Right.
and it just creates this sheer amount of mystery about who this character is and why this world seemingly hasn't shaped him the same way that it's shaped all of these other people that surround him and who want to kill him for the for the most part.
Yeah.
Also, in terms of the who are the observers and what's the relationship between the observers and the observees, it might not be what you think. It might not be what you previously think. That's all I'm saying about that. Also, who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Might not be what you think. Might not be
Listen.
what we've previously said. That's all I'm saying there. I'm tiptoeing. This is a high wire act at the Barnum Circus, and I am going across this is me, on the tightrope.
You're definitely on a rope. I think that's for sure. This this issue is fantastic, and I totally agree with pretty much everything you've said. The best part of this issue is something I can't speak about because I think that Steinbeck basically takes a stab at the reader. Stenbeck, excuse me. Sorry.
Here we go.
Stenbeck takes a stab at the reader and says, "You had no idea what this book was." And I really appreciated the way that was let out. Like we got crumbs, but it turns out that they weren't crumbs at all. They were just small pieces of arsenic.
Yeah.
So fantastic issue. Totally agree. I think you're right. This is probably one of the better issues I've seen in a long time. This 4-issue series is probably going to be the best trade that you can buy this year, hands down. Just going to say that without really knowing what the next 2 issues have in store. Stenbeck's art is incredible. Dave Stewart is doing some of the best color work that I've seen in a minute. So like nothing but high praise for this Our Bones Dust number 2. Totally with you, Nick.
Well, it looks like I'm going to have to do a 115th and 116th issue for this month because you guys are selling me on this book.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And like what the fuck is the centipede thing that talks in computer speech and seems to have a blanket with human skin? What's going on? What's going on?
Leave it.
That's not a reveal. That's mystery. People are going to hear that and be like, what is Nick? Is Nick on bath salts? Like, what's happening?
He won. The Lions won, and Nick just started injecting drugs.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the little disclaimer at some point that anytime these guys say Steinbeck, they mean Stenbeck. So because I had to put that in the first video that we did.
Yeah, you're right.
So there you go.
Stenbeck. I'm sorry, Stenbeck.
I got you guys covered. Editor's note.
Yeah.
That's what editor's notes are for. They're in the comics, and now they're in our videos.
Read this book. Read this book. Read this book. Read this book.
Yes.
Put that on the back of the
Nick,
put that on the back of the trade. Just me
Nick,
and just a long block of read this book, read this book, read this book, read this book.
I'm moving on. I've been good. It's been a frantic day, me trying to get ready for this episode because I can't believe that, again, we're at 400 episodes. I've been sitting with this fact for a little while, and it's amazing to actually be here. So hello, everyone out there on Twitch land. I'm so glad that you're here. And I appreciate the harassment, I guess, in the chat. But I read a book called Stray. It's this book here, this little tiny book. This is by Molly Mendoza. It's published by Boulagan Press. I think I'm saying that wrong. Let me double check inside this book. Boulagan Press. It's published in 2022. It's like a 52-page story that's like a super indie, super moody book about like heartbreak and not loving or loving yourself and others. I don't really know how to put a finger on describing this book because it isn't as much about finding love as it is about not letting people love you. Like this book is a weird mix of characters who, particularly one character who is trying to get over heartbreak by finding another person and not letting that other person actually love them or let them in. But at the same time, the book ends in this nebulous, is that all relationships in the end? Like we all have to deal with how we grapple with the ideas of like former heartbreak and former trust issues and all this other stuff. And I mean, it's a really, I don't know, a lot of other prose books and a lot of other comic books, I think, take hundreds and hundreds of pages to try to get you to these same thoughts that this book was able to manage in just 52, which I find to be really impressive. And I think that is a compliment not only to Mendoza's ability to write characters that have a lot of distinct voices. Like there's 3 characters that kind of float through this story in a very strange way because their art is like, it's extremely emotive, and I'm sorry if you're listening to this episode, but you should have been here live with us on Twitch. Some of the art in this book is just like, it's gorgeous. It depicts so much just with like the color work, and there's like this really beautiful mix of metaphor and reality where you kind of start to question what is real, what isn't. And she constantly abruptly brings you back to the present to try to like reestablish reality, and then it starts to blend again with fantasy. And I say fantasy not so much as like swords and elves and all this other stuff, so much as this surreal reality that our main character kind of lives in. And not really a lot of people are named in this book, so I'm sorry if I'm kind of skirting around details here, but the book is called Stray, and it is about the person who our main character ends up meeting named Stray. And there's this kind of question of like, were they in love with this person, or was it just a cat, or was it like something else? I really, really had to sit with this book after I finished it because I had to process a lot. And again, for a book that's only 52 pages long, it's very impressive to be able to deliver such like a strong story in such a small amount of time. So if you're looking for something that's really off the beaten path, very indie, very moody, highly recommend Stray. But it is a book that is heavy as hell. Like, I think there's a lot of heavy everything into this book, and I can't really throw like a content warning about a specific thing, but it is like an emotionally heavy book, and I love that. I really, really love that when books are able to do that. So Stray by Molly Mendoza.
Seems like a pretty small book to me. Like, I don't know how heavy it can be.
Listen, I will punch you through the internet right now.
Jokes.
Don't you dare.
Danny with the dad jokes.
I did have a quick question, Mike.
Yeah.
Speaking of the size of the book, for your reading experience, is it weird like reading a book that's a different size? Because the reason I read most of my stuff digitally is because as a glasses wearer, it's just a lot easier to like read digital screens.
I feel
you know, where you can kind of zoom in and out and stuff. But how is it reading even this book is even smaller than regular size comic?
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit bigger than like your traditional manga volume, I think. I don't know. I think what's really interesting about books like this, and I think about interesting about comics in general, is like the size of the format can really kind of influence how you feel about the book sometimes. Like, I think manga has this perfect handhold size. I think there's something about the reason manga volumes are the way that they are is for like pocketability and carryability and all this other stuff. But indie books like this is like it's got a very hard like spine, so it's kind of hard to like hold open. If you notice, like the binding is very tight, and I don't know, I feel like that influences me in like a positive way because it gives me a vibe for the book before I even dig into it. Like, because I, especially when it comes to indie publishers, a lot of the times, they're very meticulously picking the types of paper and stock and cover grade and all this other stuff because they want the book to feel a certain way. Like, I can pull up 2 other books that I have at home from the same publisher, like Faster by Jesse Lonergan is like this paperback, almost zine style book. And I think he did that intentionally. He wanted it to feel fast and loose because the book is literally about people driving fast and going crazy because they're on like this fantasy F1 racing track, right? So the feeling and size of this book is intentional. I think reading it digitally, you kind of lose a little bit of that. Now, this is not me saying you got to go physical or nothing else, because I disagree with that wholeheartedly. But I do really appreciate like the care that went into how this book feels, because that is very, very important. And I think a lot of creators who are publishing and self-publishing or publishing through smaller publishers do that intentionally. And we get that sometimes at Indie or Image and Boom and so on and so forth, where we get like special paper stock, like the Enfield Gang Massacre, for instance, where it's got that paper stock that is intentionally meant to like wash out all of Phillips's colors, which is crazy to me because that book looks totally different digitally than it does in paper. I'm glad that I own both for that reason.
Yeah.
So anyways, long story short, it influences me in a good way. How about that?
And pretty soon you'll be able to carry Watchmen in your pocket when DC puts out those little manga sized collections. So you can have it all.
How are you going to read the lettering in that book at a size that small?
I can't even imagine. You got to carry around a magnifying glass.
We'll talk about that in the second half. We have so many freaking comic books to get to, and we are like 30 minutes in. So I'm going to bounce back over to you, Zach. What's another book that you've read recently?
All right. I read issues 1 through 8 of Local Man from Image Comics, written, created, and art by Tony Fleeks and Tim Seeley. Art, the colors by Brad Simpson and Felipe Sobriero. This book, in a lot of ways, is a love letter to like 90s era Image Comics, like that schlocky, good, delicious Cyberforce, Shadowhawk, Youngblood, and whatnot. And Seeley and Fleeks are like very direct about that in their editorial section in the back of each issue. But even if they didn't, it's like glaringly obvious. Like Local Man, and they reference these characters, so it's almost like this character lives in that world. and
I see.
which is kind of fun. So Local Man is a story of a 90s style edgelord hero named Crossjack, who's part of a team in the Image universe called Third Gen, your typical 90s corporate run hero squad. Dude gets the boot from the team and shunned by the community, stripped of his code name, penniless, moves home with his parents in a small town in middle America. And of course, him being there sets off a chain of events that just shows his sleepy town isn't as sleepy as it seems, and that there's maybe some nefarious shit going on under the surface stemming from his superhero youth. This book it's a lot of fun. I can't believe I slept on it for so long, because I won't say I went out of my way to ignore it, but every time I would look at it, I'd be like, maybe, nah, and I would just walk past it. It was that kind of thing. But man, it's so cool. It's so much fun. It jumps between art styles with the present day, giving me like hard Matt Fraction, David Aja, Hawkeye run vibes from the style and the color palette choices. And then when we learn, we learn about Crossjack and his time with Third Gen, what got him booted. It's straight up like 90s style, sexy women poses, dudes with giant shoulder pads and giant muscles. Like very 90s. Like they did not shy from it, and I love it. So the story has a nice balance of down on his luck loser has to rebuild and small town detective story with some like over the top Image superhero shenanigans for flavor. Like there's this ridiculous guy called like the Camo Crusader, who is like an evangelical superhero. And it gets pretty wild. And
hold on.
And I'm really enjoying it. And again, even with the way the story is being told, I'm reminded of that Hawkeye run, but way more adult. Like accidentally getting high on mushrooms and sending wiener pics to your ex-girlfriend while illegally doing detective work. That kind of adult. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it is it's Tim Seeley writing the book, right? So
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, and Jack is like this lovable loser who you see continuing to actively screw up, but he's trying to find his way back to like the core of who he was, which was someone who wanted to do good and make the world a better place, but he just got caught up in being a hero and being a celebrity. And if you're like me and you slept on this book, man, I can't suggest it more. But it's not for the kids.
Okay. I don't know what to ask you more about this book, because I'm scared of what you might say. I also slept on this book. I saw it and I was like, yeah, it looks fun, but also like maybe not my shtick. If it's all out, maybe I'll give this a try.
It's still ongoing.
The library if they have it.
It's still happening.
Ongoing.
Yeah.
I think issue 9 is out, I think.
Yeah, the first volume is out. Yeah.
Okay.
But the book is still rolling. Yeah. Like I read the first arc and then like just ran into the second arc because I was so into it. I just kept going.
Gotcha. Cool.
Nice.
Danny, what about you? What else you been reading?
Well, Mike, first of all, we have breaking Texas Weather Watch news. It is now snowing in Dallas.
Wow.
Dallas, Texas.
It is snowing right now. It wasn't snowing when we started this show, but it is snowing now.
Okay. Well, I hope you got your salt ready.
So
you got
the
sweater
temperature's
and
around 40,
scarf.
so I don't even know why it's snowing. Like scientifically, I don't think that's how that works.
I mean, well, Danny, if you remember from high school or elementary school science class, the air up there is cold, and the air down here is not as cold.
I'm gonna have to go back and check out that episode of Bill Nye again.
Just throw in the more you know, the little stars, the little noise that happens as the star goes across the screen, please.
Yeah, I perfectly described it. So, anyways.
But now, as far as another book that I read, so there's this really cool magazine called 2000 AD that for a long time I have not been reading, but Paul talks about it all the time. He's very excited about it. And I do really like Judge Dredd. So this week I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw 2000 AD were promoting this new story in the Judge Dredd magazine. And then I was like, oh, let me see what else they have going on. Recently, they started a new story called Judge Dredd, A Better World. So I read parts 1, 2, and 3. So this is in issues 2364 to 2366. So it is an anthology magazine. These stories are about 6 to 8 pages long. So I kind of read like an issue of the whole story, really.
Yeah.
So this is written by Rob Williams and Arthur Wyatt. with art by Henry Flint, letters by Annie Parkhouse. And here's a quick synopsis of the story because it just started very recently. I think the magazine comes out weekly if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Paul
Yeah.
can correct me on that later on. But in Mega City 1, home to over 200 million citizens, this urban hell is situated along the east coast of the post-apocalyptic America. Crime is rampant, and the only future cops are the judges. Empowered to dispense instant justice, can stop total anarchy. Toughest of them all is Judge Dredd. He is the law. Now, Accounts Judge Mainland has been conducting an experiment in Sector 304 in a bid to reduce crime. And what is this experiment? How about if we solve crime by educating our citizens rather than using constant violence?
Oh my
Huh.
God.
What a concept.
Wait. How does this go wrong? Or is this just a story that is going to like further prove that Judge Dredd is like this horrible, horrible fascist that you
Well,
should not root for?
where it goes wrong is that the powers that be, they don't want this experiment to succeed because they like the status quo. So
Right.
so funny enough, Dredd is kind of doing his own thing. He's doing something else, but Judge Maitland is kind of our protagonist in this story. So
Okay.
everything, you get to see a lot of that stuff. The book isn't subtle at all, and I kind of appreciate that. Like, I really like that it's kind of in your face about it. Also,
Mm-hmm.
this is a book from the UK, so like they're just kind of speaking in general terms because obviously fascism is a worldwide problem. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, but yeah, the art is very clean. All the characters look either super badass or kind of gross. There's no in between with 2000 AD art, I feel like.
Yep. Yep.
Which like I said, I'm really enjoying. It's very well paced. The chapters are broken up very neatly. It really feels like I'm just reading a chapter on Shonen Jump, but this is about UK stories instead of
Mm-hmm.
manga. And I'm completely sold on 2000 AD. So I'm gonna be checking out a few more stories. I was also already a fan of Rob Williams because he's writing Petrolhead with Pi Power on Image. So like,
Hell yeah.
I don't know, if you're not reading Petrolhead, you're definitely missing out
Agreed.
on some really cool art and also some really cool storytelling. But yeah, I'm excited for this. This will be kind of like revisiting an old friend here because I've read Judge Dredd stuff in the past and I really enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
it. And I feel like I'm really fully in now. There's a couple of other stories that I'm reading, but those are in the Judge Dredd magazine, which is a
Okay.
different thing from the 2000 AD magazine. That's the part that I'm still a little confused on, like what book is which and all that stuff. So, but I'll figure it out. If
Gotcha.
not, I'm sure Paul can give me some pointers on
Yeah.
how to read all this stuff. But yeah, really fun stuff. Highly
Mm-hmm.
recommend.
Well, it's interesting because though I feel like the art of writing an 8-page story is like a very, very fine one, right? I've read like plenty of Judge Dredd stories. Like Paul and I did a whole thing where we read a bunch of Judge Dredd stories way back in the day and talked about them a bunch, like the what was it, the Travel of the Curse Lands or something like that. The Curse Lands, where Judge Dredd basically had to ride a motorcycle across America. It was awesome. And those books are so wordy. They are super duper wordy. I guess my question is, has that continued into the modern day Dredd? Did you feel like there was a lot of words in order to like convey things, or is it like a modern day comic where it's kind of paced in the same way?
Maybe this is maybe this is Williams and Wyatt. Like maybe they have a different writing style, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
because as you guys may know, I'm not a wordy book kind of guy either. So
Oh
like
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's one of the reasons I haven't gone back to read some of the older Judge Dredd because I
sure.
know it's pretty wordy. They let the art tell you a lot about the story too. Like they're really
Nice.
good at that. So I feel like they're being cautious and also just kind of very holding back on dropping a lot of dialogue if it's not needed. I like that I feel like they're giving me as the reader enough credit to know that I'll figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
like if I need to. But yeah, I think that part has changed, or maybe just this creative team is approaching it differently.
Gotcha. Cool. That's very exciting to hear. I feel like I can't get on board with another ongoing series like this, but I might have to. We'll see. Nick, before I talk myself into this, is there another book you want to talk about real quick?
Yeah, I mean, other than the fact that I'm eagerly awaiting like the Judge Dredd plotline where he wakes up in our world and he's suddenly like an overworked public defender. I feel like there's definitely
Sure. Sure.
definitely something there. And now there's a whole bunch of writers out there saying, well, I can't use that idea, if they even thought it's good. Yeah, I've got another book, and it sort of coincides with my sort of mentality for January 2024, which is, same old me, new ideas. They're still awful. One of them being that for some reason I was like, you know what I'm going to do finally? I think I'm going to actually learn how to play Magic, Magic the Gathering. I sort of have some weird, fond, nebulous memories. I shouldn't say fond; they're just more weird and nebulous of sort of like family get-togethers, and my cousins were always playing all these different card games, and
Mhm.
they were older than me by like 4 or 5 years, and like two of them had Magic the Gathering back in the mid '90s, and they were just all arguing and shouting. And I remember like walking into the room where they were playing Magic, and they had these cards on the table with like skulls and like fire spells, and they're like, "Get out of here!" and that happened more than a couple times.
Mhm.
And So I think I always somehow buried that memory in the back of my head as like this like hidden club that I needed to be a part of stupidly. Um, so here we are, 2024 in the year of our Lord. Nearly basically 30 years later, and I'm like, you know what? There's something I need to go after. There's some untapped potential. So I've started learning, and I picked up a couple, trainer kits or whatever, and in line with that, I was like, hey, wasn't there a comic? So I decided I was going to read the first couple issues of, well, it's just simply called Magic. Uh, Not even an exclamation point, not even Magic the Gathering. So I read the first 3 issues of Magic. It's written by
Mhm.
Jed McKay, who I believe is currently doing some books for Marvel. I think he did
Yep.
Ghost Rider recently.
Moon Knight.
With
Moon Knight.
Okay, yeah, with Iguara on art, who I believe did Blue Beetle at the beginning of the New 52. Ariana Consani on on colors, with Ed Dukeshire on letters. This series launched at Boom in April 2021, ran for 25 issues. They're all on Comixology Unlimited for anyone who's interested. Um, they also did some miniseries and one-shots after the end of that. The series was previously at Dark Horse during the 90s and at IDW for most of the 2010s. Does it offer a lot more mileage for those who are steeped in the lore? Sure. Does it make everyone else feel like they're kind of in over their heads? Yeah, understandable. Uh, Look, like right away, the book sets up like a really small, basic foundation, which I think most readers can follow, which is that Magic, the book, and the card game, I guess both, take place in a multiverse, and that's made up of lots and lots of different planes. That's Planes.
Mhm.
Uh, Planeswalkers are special individuals capable of traversing between the planes, and they also possess special powers. And it's the
Okay.
sort of conceit that pretty much anyone who's dabbled in science fiction literature or has read a couple big two books here or there should be pretty comfortable with. Of course, Magic has existed since the mid '90s, so anyone who's like, "Oh, Magic is ripping blah 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 off," like it's been around for a while. Um, the book actually has a pretty good eye for stylized action, and Konsani's colors are wonderfully neon and bright. And it follows a trio of planeswalkers who are basically investigating assassination attempts made against themselves. And I can say after reading a couple issues that McKay actually does slowly start meeting out some of the core background details that if you're steeped in the lore, it's probably already well known to any of those people. And
Nice.
for the rest of us, we actually kind of start to pick up some of the pieces and not have it front loaded at the beginning of the book, or have it be like 2 big pages of text at the beginning where it's like, this is all you need to know about 30 years of magic. Here you go. And then we'll drop you into the book. It doesn't do that. Um,
Oh, good.
so yeah, enjoying it. It's nice to know that it actually had a pretty long run. I like the art. And again, for anyone who feels weirdly compelled to take a look at this, it's all on CU. So, there you go.
Nick, as a former Magic addict, should
Oh
you feel
no.
you're in too deep, I'm here for you. We can talk
Just gonna
about it.
put this up.
Oh wow, look at
Um,
that.
this is a thing. I'm just throwing this out to everybody. I'm showing for those of you who are listening at home you can't really see it on Twitch, which I'm sorry, is
Oh,
the
you
Jeff
can see the
Goldblum.
important bits.
Yeah, you can see the important bits, which is his rippling chest muscles. Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park as a character, Ian Convalescent Charmer. I don't know what any of this means, but it's a thing. So,
Power 4, strength 5, power 4,
yeah,
toughness 5. Yes.
yeah. Cool stuff. Glad you're into magic now, Nick.
Yeah,
Oh,
oh boy,
You
oh
freaking
boy.
nerd.
Yeah,
Nick,
for
I
those
do.
for those unaware, and it's sort of interesting because again, like I'm very new to any of this, but it certainly seems to have been really divisive in the Magic community. Maybe 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, Magic decided that they were going to basically branch out and start letting in other things, other
Mhm.
franchises. So we've
Yeah.
seen Rick and Morty, and again, Nick, this is a crazy weird list. Is there a theme or unifying thing? It's whoever says yes. That seems to be the unifying theme.
Yep.
So we've seen
Right.
Tomb Raider, Jurassic Park,
Lord of the
Doctor
Rings.
Who,
Yeah,
Lord of the Rings.
Junji
Yeah,
Ito. They did a whole Junji Ito run.
I can't wait
God.
for the Lego Lord of the Rings Star Wars
Rick and
cards or something. I'm
Morty.
sure they'll do it.
Because basically Magic is a Wizards of the Coast was bought by Hasbro, and Hasbro wants your money.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so actually thinking about it, Transformers totally makes sense because they own that.
Yeah.
And I think there was
That was
one or
its
two
own
other
game,
ones.
too.
They did Godzilla, like the
Yeah.
Godzilla run.
Yeah.
So
I will say, Nick, I tried to read this when it came out originally, and like you mentioned,
yeah.
I felt like I love Jed McKay. Like I've been reading his stuff since Black Cat over at Marvel, and I continue to read it.
Mm-hmm.
Because Moon Knight started around the same time as this came out. And boy, I felt super lost. Like it was
Yes.
very confusing.
Yes.
I played a little bit of Magic, and I will tell you, if you want to get into Magic, playing Commander is the easiest way because
Totally.
I hate building decks, but I love playing with a pre-made deck. But yeah, that's probably a whole different conversation. But I tried it. The art is fantastic, and all the character designs look very cool because it's Magic. They've hopefully paid plenty of artists to make really cool characters. But yeah, it was. I had to peace out. Anytime they drop one of those one shots, I'm like, should I try it again? But I know I'm gonna be lost in the lore, so
The
I
lore is
think I'm just gonna
intense.
skip. Yeah, I'm gonna
Well,
skip out on
listen,
Yeah,
these.
it's so weird. People are
listen.
like,
No,
having-
I'm stopping this. I'm stopping this right here before we get way too deep. You. I know that we could go for an hour. Let's save this for the post episode chat. I want to talk about comic books, guys. I'm sorry, we got to stop this nerd shit. We're gonna go into this other thing. I've got one other book I want to talk about really quick before we do the top of our
The
pile.
comic book podcast. We got to stop talking this nerd shit.
Yes, I want to talk about the House of Lowther Volume 1. I got this very nice, beautiful hardcover edition that I got. There was a Kickstarter recently. This is originally a webtoon published comic book, and they did a collection for the first volume of it. This is by Kaylin Smith, who is basically like a fan favorite here over at I Read Comic Books, I think, ever since Kate Lamphere introduced me to Kaylin's work. I can't stop reading everything that she's doing, and this book is no different. It is fantastic. This is my quick summary said this was the collected edition of a webtoon comic, and oh my god, I can't believe the cliffhanger, because that's basically true. Sawyer Ellis takes a job at the mysterious House of Lowther, a mansion / institute turned specialized hospital. Sawyer's job is to take care of cleaning Corridor C and to not interact with the people who live in this institution. But of course, she ends up interacting with them, and they're all cryptids. So this is a book that's about cryptids, and I was so happy because I had no idea. I just saw her name, I clicked back, and then it just showed up at my house 6 months later. That's the best way to deal with things when it comes to Kickstarter. But one, this is a very fun and super cute book. If you've never seen Kaylin Smith's art before, like the cover does a pretty good justice of this. And again, I'm on Twitch, so I'm going to show this off. But this book it's all in black and white, and it's very beautifully done. I can't really show the cuteness of this, but she does have like a Disney animation-ish style to her art. There's a character who's a werewolf, and he looks like a werewolf man. I think there's like Mothman and Bigfoot. Oh, everybody's got a portrait at the back of this book, which is pretty cool. So like,
cool.
here's the Chupacabra and Bigfoot, right? Like in her style. So it's a really cute book, and two, the cast of everybody in this series is super lovable. You immediately start to like them as soon as they're on page, and they get just a couple moments with our character Sawyer. But it's a webcomic. And so that means every single chapter ends with a cliffhanger that makes you scream. And you're like, I have to keep reading this. I sat down to read this book. I was like, oh, I'll read 1 or 2 chapters. It's like a 12 chapter book. And I'll pick it up and kind of read it as I go along. Sometimes I do that with collected editions. In this book, I just read it from start to finish. And the cliffhanger at the end of this first volume, after tonight's recording, I'm basically going to go finish it because I finished it today. I sat down and read it today. I figured I wasn't going to talk about it. I was going to talk about something else. But the cliffhanger in this issue, or the last issue in this volume, was so unbelievable. It's what I got to read more of this. So if you get a chance, go read this on Webtoon. It's called The House of Lowther. But I love this book. I can't wait to read more of it. Highly, highly recommended for like a very well-paced, well-drawn, super fun twist on like meeting cryptids and like the idea of a meet cute where you've got 2 characters who kind of hate each other. It's just fantastic. So highly recommended there.
Is the webtoon also in black and white, or was that for that nice format that you have?
I believe that the whole book is in black and white.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sure that there will probably be an eventual like color reveal that's going to just break the brains of all the readers, but who knows? I can't predict what Caitlin Smith is going to do, but totally love it. If you get a chance, go read the first chapter, and if you're not sold, I'll give you some fake webtoons money or whatever that is. I don't know. The Mike Rapin guarantee comes back for episode 400. God, we're so far into the show, but I'm sorry, I have to do this because it's in the notes. I'm sorry, Zander. Nick, I know you have one more book you want to talk about, but I challenge you to keep it under 5 minutes.
Sure. Put me on the clock. Set the timer.
Okay. Yep. Someone out there, please start.
I also read Hellboy Winter Special, The Yule Cat, story and art by Matt Smith, not the Doctor Who one. Colors by Chris O'Halloran, perhaps best known for coloring Ice Cream Man, amongst of other bunch of great books. Letters by Clem Robbins. Again, here he is. So I really love these sort of one-off issues. We've had a couple of these winter specials, probably had them consecutively since maybe 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Just these little nice, maybe 30-page standalone issues. You really don't need to have read borderline anything else, unless maybe this is your very first experience with Hellboy, which, even thinking about that now, would probably still be perfectly fine.
Sure.
This story takes place in Reykjavik, Iceland, 1990. He's brought in to deal with this, local disturbance, and he meets up with this anthropology professor named Professor Larusen, and he's sort of talking with him about what they're going to do that day and look into it. And while they're doing that, him and Larusen are dropping Larusen's kids off at school. It's just a funny little scene because as the kids walk away, one of them goes, "Bye, Mr. Hell," to Hellboy. And it's just another one of these like great moments where like you would think kids would be like super unchill about the fact that there's like this giant demon wearing a massive trench coat walking around all the time, and yet like kids are actually the most like unperturbed in almost all Hellboy stories by like the fact that Hellboy is a thing. It's like, it's great. For those unaware, Smith drew Folklords at Boom with Matt Kint. He also drew Hellboy in Love and Hellboy the Bones of Giants, the latter of which actually had the exact same art team as the winter special.
Nice.
This book follows this legend, and I'm just going to butcher the Icelandic language here, of the Jólakaturin. It's this folktale where a big cat eats children that didn't work hard enough throughout the year to earn new clothes for Christmas. It sounds pretty on brand for most Scandinavian legends.
Sure does.
And it's a real legend. Oh, I mean, like, the cat's not real. I mean, I don't think the cat is real.
You don't know
but
that.
The
Sure.
story is real. Yeah. If you Google it, it's like an established Scandinavian folktale, which is always really fun when you like, whenever you're reading a Hellboy book and they'll be like, oh, this is like the ancient Gnostic gospel or whatever. And like, it becomes a game of, well, is this real or is this made up bullshit for the book? And of course, most of the time it's real. This is another one of those issues.
That's cool.
Smith is fast becoming probably my favorite modern Hellboy artist, and O'Halloran is really nice to have on colors. I love Dave Stewart. I know he probably like smashes his fist through the wall every time he isn't the one coloring a Hellboy book, a la like Adam Driver, and it's like not him, and he doesn't get the call. But for these tonally lighter issues, comparatively tonally lighter issues, I think O'Halloran is actually a better pick.
Danny, did we come in at 5 minutes on the dot, or
we did it? We did it.
Oh my, Nick,
Very nice.
I'm
Congratulations.
so proud of you.
I will
so
just,
proud
I
of
will
you,
just
Nick.
Episode
add,
400.
Yeah.
Episode 400 experience.
More miracle, yeah.
Yeah, miracle.
Yeah.
I will
So-
just add my 30 seconds here because I also read
Please.
this book. I love that it's about a whole thing that's like a real life mythology, but also something that I had never heard of. So that's really
Yeah.
cool. I love these little one shots from Hellboy. That's all the Hellboy I need. I don't think that I'll ever go back and read all the BPRD stuff, but just a quarterly Hellboy, like, or like the giant robot thing that just happened. Like, that's what I want from Hellboy.
Heck yeah.
Just
Yeah,
these little
yeah, man.
stories. So definitely recommend.
Nice. Well, Nick, again, I'm so proud of you for keeping it under 5 minutes here. We're gonna move on really quick. We're gonna talk about our top of our pile comics that are new or old, or books that we're just trying to read because they've been on our shelves for forever. I want to say hello to everybody watching live. Hello, all 9 of you. You're fantastic human beings. Thank you for joining us an hour into this show as we're talking about comic books. And for those of you who did reach out and when we asked for your top of your pile picks, folks sent us what they were reading next. Matt S is going to be reading Gods #4. That's that weirdo Marvel book. Avocado Kenobi is going to be reading Nightwing, the meme issue, which has the fantastic cover that Danny is showing on screen right now of the woman yelling at the cat. And CK is going to be reading Undiscovered Country Volume 4, a book that I definitely bought all of the volumes of and never read. So CK, I hope it's good. I've been meaning to read it for a very long time.
Bonkers.
Bonkers, you say? Okay. Well, I guess let's kick over to Danny. What's on the top of your pile this week?
So on the top of my pile is a new book.
Did you just pull that off your
I
wall?
did. I did. Well,
Hell yes, dude.
I don't have the new issue because it doesn't come out till next week, but I'm gonna be
Sure.
reading the Schlub #6. This is the ash can for the Schlub that I'm holding. So like that should
Nice.
tell you how much I'm really enjoying this book. But this is the conclusion of this either this arc or the book completely. So take that how you will. This is a book written by Ryan Stegman and Kenny Porter, with art by Terrell Cannon, colors by Mike Spicer, and letters by John J. Hill. This book is your classic Freaky Friday meets superhero shenanigans. So if you haven't been reading that, I highly recommend it. It's very funny. This is the final confrontation with the big villain. The city's under siege, but all the stuff that's going on, I would say it's kind of not inconsequential, but like it's not really what the book is about. The book is about these two characters that are kind of broken. They have a lot of family issues, right? We have Roger, who's this dentist that was, that has been put in the body of the most powerful superhero on Earth. And we have Cirrus, who's the most powerful superhero on Earth, that his father kind of keeps wanting him to come back to his world to do all this stuff. So, like, both of these guys are dealing with a lot of their own internal issues. And now that they've switched places, I guess, like any Freaky Friday story, they have to learn to appreciate what they have and learn to appreciate all this. So, that's great. Tyrell Cannon just was set loose on the character designs, and he just goes all out. Makes everything look very dynamic. These big bombastic fights, big moments, but also what I really appreciate is like in the more quiet moments when there's emotion to be portrayed, like the expression, they really hit. So this is your chance to catch up on the second title from KLC Press. I think they're doing a lot of really fun stuff over there. Kenny
Nice.
Porter writes a lot of really cool superhero comics that I really enjoy. Ryan Stegman, although I haven't, I don't know if this is the first thing he's writing, but this is the longest thing I've read by him. So he doesn't draw anything on the book, but he does have variant covers because we know those are gonna sell, and Danny's
Mhm.
gonna buy them. So yeah, highly recommend the Schlub #6. I specifically didn't read my preview because I wanted to talk about it on the show as the top
Oh.
of my pile. So that's what I'm doing right after the show. As you guys talk in the second half, I'm just gonna be reading the Schlub #6.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so
Perfect.
Oh, got it. All right.
Perfect.
Message received.
Well, Nick, what's on the top of your pile this week?
So it's definitely Hexagon Bridge #5. I know
Gotta be.
I'm a little bit late to the fucking party on this book. Writing and art and everything else by Richard Blake, who, if you haven't heard of him, that's not an accident. He literally hasn't published anything else.
Mhm.
Apparently, he studied painting and design, did some group exhibitions in NYC, and just started exploring the graphic novel medium, and this is his first thing. for a book that like seems completely overstimulating visually at points, like the core conceit of this book is actually pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
Roughly 2,000 years in the future, a pair of explorers get themselves lost in a parallel dimension called the Bridge. It's a place considered largely non-traversable by humans, so that work is left to AI intelligence, which gets stuffed into a robot body, but that AI needs a link with like sort of a navigator, which in this case is the daughter of the missing duo. And that's basically the core conceit. These explorers get lost, and this team tries to recover them, and they sort of start developing this robot, and they start developing this bond with its human navigator in order to have them, and they start doing trial runs to sort of plan for when they're going to make this rescue attempt. And 12 years pass between sort of the initial moment of them going missing and sort of the recovery operation. But this is one of those things, much like Inception or much like Interstellar, in that time moves differently between our time and their time, which is a fitting comparison because I do honestly believe that Inception is possibly one of the closest comparisons I think you can make to Hexagon Bridge. It's a little reductive, but I think in terms of having this architecture and landscape that exists in like this physics breaking state of just constant flux,
Mm-hmm.
sort of mirrors the film. Sort of cities that fold in on themselves or sort of like fold out like an accordion. And you know, just moments where like all of the floor or everything just started just breaking into these little, you know, shards. It's really interesting, and it's also kind of deals with that broad theme of kind of navigating dreamscapes in a world where time passes differently. Um, but what I really love about this book is that Blake doesn't get hung up on quote unquote like the science behind it all. He's not concerned with putting up like a veneer of techno babble so
Yeah.
that this book can like firmly fall into the this could happen category. You know, you can also kind of see this in the fact that like despite being 2,000 years in the future, there are definitely things that feel like relatively untouched from 2024.
Right. Right.
But you know, again, like who cares? Um, like it's just so interesting. And just can we just get around to the art? And I think that's obviously the showcase here, right?
Yeah.
The story
Yeah.
doesn't get in its own way. Full credit to that, right? You don't get hung up on the story being like, oh, it's too hard to understand, or it's like
Well,
annoying, or the dialogue. I don't think the story is that hard to understand.
no,
Okay.
I don't either. I think that it gets a little bit too ephemeral sometimes, especially those
Sure.
first two issues. I think we're pretty like, what's going on here? And I went
Right.
like blinders on and said, I don't care. This is a 5-issue miniseries. Who gives a fuck, right?
Right.
But sure, well, I'll give you that conceit that it is not that complicated of a story, but those first two issues are very like science.
What is
in
happening?
time? What is
Yeah.
even an AI? Like,
Right.
I don't know.
Why is it taking them 12 years to train this thing or whatever?
Yeah.
So like for some comic readers that like have an IV deep in both arms of like 400 cc's of twisty canon, like yeah, those people are probably going to have some problems with this book.
Uh-huh.
But it's a functional and light framework because the art is just, my god. Like you start out with that sequence of the woman running through that snowy landscape, right?
Mhm.
Only to have her suddenly break apart into this kaleidoscopic burst of like rainbow geometric shards that just reassemble in a European cafe, or what looks
Yeah.
like a European cafe. And it just really sets the tone of this rapid fire juxtaposition that this book jostles the reader with between quote unquote real life and simulations of it, between like the familiar and the never before seen. Just there are so many panels in this book that deserve to be like put in a museum or in an exhibition or on someone's wall.
Yeah.
It's trippy, it's disorienting, but it never feels messy for messy's sake.
Right.
And the colors, like they all have this sort of stained glass feel to them. It's just, it might be the best looking book that comes out this year, and we're in January.
Well,
It's
this is I will agree. There is like an elegance to the way that Blake approaches like their page layouts and the way that they do like especially like 2-page spreads and some of their chapter markers in the story.
Yes.
It's very unique, and I think you have this in your notes. So I'm just going to steal from you of like, should this
Sure.
have been a graphic novel? I don't know. I do think that this works actually pretty well as a serialized book because it like forces you to stop and think about the book before you get into the next like segment of it, because it's not perfectly broken up into like issue is one chapter. It's kind of
Each
segmented a
issue
little
is
bit
several
different.
chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 or 3.
And I appreciate that because it's like Blake is trying to deliver you like a very complex story told through many small pieces, but doesn't want you to read it all at once, because I think you might lose a little bit of the subtlety of what they're trying to do in this series if it was a graphic novel. Now, I'm going to recommend everybody go buy this as an OGN or collected edition when it comes out.
Yeah.
But I do think that it does benefit from having been read issue to issue. I'll be curious to see what it feels like when you read it as a collected edition. Like, does the story instead of the nuance get lost as you read it just like in one go? Because I imagine that if I had this as a collected edition, I would just sit and read it. There's no stopping because this book is crazy and it's really, really good. But I appreciate not having to read it every month or not all at once because I'm reading it month to month.
Yeah.
I'll let you know what that's like, Mike, because I read the first issue and I was like,
Mhm.
oh no, this is something I need to read all together, otherwise I'm gonna get lost. I'm gonna get lost in the Hexagon Bridge myself.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'll let you know how that goes.
God,
Yeah.
the design work is so
It's
good.
so
Like
good.
just the design alone of her like AI partner, like the robot with the
Mhm.
hat and the face is
And
God.
and yet it feels very light on the page. Like it doesn't feel like there's too much going on at the same
Yeah.
time. It's weird. I don't know. I mean, I don't have the talent or the know-how how to describe it. But
Yeah.
it's super cool.
Yeah, it's a very solid book. Lest me talk about it too much, let me talk about one more book, and then Zach, I'm going to kick over to you. I'm reading Mermaid Town. This is this indie manga that I picked up at Mocha Fest a little while ago. This is by Tomohiro Tsugawa. It's a collection of 9 short stories by Tsugawa that are collected from a series of very vivid dreams, strange interactions, and mysterious locations that this creator experienced. This is me basically paraphrasing from the official synopsis. I don't really know what this book is about other than it looks very pretty and interesting. And when I saw it on the shelf, I said, oh, that's a really nice cover. I'll buy that for a couple of bucks. So I'm very excited to sit down and read something that's kind of off the beaten path of like the normal manga that I think most folks find when they go to like a Barnes and Noble or anywhere else that they go and buy manga. And the thing that's a little disturbing about this book is that none of the characters in this series have eyes or a nose. Like if you look at the cover, I'm showing everybody here on Twitch, like everyone just is like a face. And even if you go into the book, like multiple stories, they're just like people with a mouth. I like that. I don't know. And I think that leans into like the more like dreaminess of it, where you like see people, you know, you just have that thing where when you're dreaming, you're like, I know this person. And it looks like a transmogrified, like weird octopus monster. You go, no, that was my mom. And you're like, how did I know that? I don't know. So yeah, I'm excited to see what this book has to bring. I mean, a little short story collection book is nice. It's very thin, so this will probably be a nice read over a day or so, just to like check in with something that's not just a shonen protagonist punching a stronger antagonist in the face. So yeah.
Mike,
But
quick
Zach,
question. Sorry,
yeah.
Zach. I have to intervene.
Go for
Are
it.
you only reading books now that are not regular size?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
I mean, listen, you buy books from like a bookstore or from a bookstore or a book fair, which is, I got this at like Mocha Fest, which is like an indie comics publishing festival. Nothing's printed the same size as a regular Marvel and DC trade because guess what? Those things suck. I mean, the quality of those books suck anyway, so why not get a smaller little book that's, you know, looks better?
Mike's always rolling up on the show with some book, and he's like, anyway, there's only 20 copies. They all have a self-destruct sequence. You have 30 pages. You have 30, days to read the book, and then it self-destructs, and then it wipes your mind with the neuralizer from Men in Black. And so if you haven't gotten your copy already, it's too late. So
I'm here to give everyone at home FOMO. So that's the whole goal of this show. If that wasn't clear, you haven't been listening for 400 episodes, baby. Zach, tell us about your book.
Oh my. I am also reading a book that isn't the normal size. Let's look at it so Danny can freak out. Look at it, Danny. It's not the right size.
At least none of you are reading Private Eye by Brian K. Vaughan, because then I would find you and I would rip that book in half.
Yeah.
This book is called WIST. It's written and drawn by Steve M. Robertson. I found this randomly while death scrolling on TikTok late at night and bought it on a whim. Because
Okay.
the little video that he did, I was like, oh, I'm sold. So Robertson describes WIST as a dark fantasy horror tale and noted that it would be perfect for people who love the video game Elden Ring or the manga masterpiece Berserk. So I was like, sign me the hell up, take my $15 or whatever it costs.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a combination of that and the gorgeous black and white art that really sucked me in. I'll see if I can try and show some while I read, and because it's real pretty.
Okay.
It's a real pretty black and
What?
white book. Like and his attention to detail is nuts. This is the kind of art that you know like you take a magnifying glass to. Like his use of lighting like really makes it all
Dude.
pop off. It's got so many dimensions, and because of the style, he's able to really play with blending like the grays and the blacks and give us something special. There's nothing flat about any of this. Wist had to take dude so long to put together because like
Oh,
this
for
is
sure.
meticulous, and each page is a work of art worthy of being framed. Because like I've only paged through a little bit, and I saw like on his TikTok, and I was like, this is gorgeous. I want to get a hold of it. And being someone who really loves dark stuff that plays with religious themes, I was all about this story. So here's a blurb from wistseries.com. It's in a world ruled by strange and horrible gods, Wist's life as an angel is a fate worse than death, until a young witch offers him the chance to escape his dark master once and for all. It seems right up my alley. And
Dude, this is like The Crow meets
Man,
Death
everyone
And I
is
love The
reading
Crow.
like the most easy breezy fucking books this week.
It's
like,
been a chill month, Nick. I told you, it's been a real chill
Yeah.
month for me. But yeah, it's a pretty quality paperback. It's like $15 or $16. Dude signed it for me. I got it off the TikTok shop. It's on Amazon, or you can get his
Nice.
ebook if anybody wants to check it out. Dude's not paying me or anything, but I like supporting DIY stuff. And if he wants to pay me, that's cool, because I'm looking to buy my kid a PS5 so we could play Spider-Man. So
Heck
I'll shill
yeah.
your stuff wherever you want. I'll wear the Liquid Death merch, whatever. Everybody throw money at me.
Zach,
we're gonna get you in one of those
Yeah.
NASCAR fire suits,
Yeah.
basically,
Mhm,
just
mhm.
covered with
Let's do it.
logos.
Let's
Listen,
do it.
if we get enough followers on Twitch, we'll set Zach on fire. That's what I'm
I'll
saying
do
right
it.
now.
Whoa.
fuck.
Anyway, subscribe to us on Twitch today, and we'll set Zach on fire. That's a promise.
We're gonna have
anyways,
a jackass
we're gonna-
episode
Zach,
of
before we go to break,
IRCB now.
Yeah,
I
okay,
gotta say,
yeah.
you had my
Mm.
curiosity when you were talking about the book, and then you showed that
Mhm.
art, and now you have my attention because
Yeah,
holy
Danny's
yeah,
already
yeah.
buying it right
Gorgeous.
now.
That's right.
He's
Yeah, I mean-
he's already made it clear that he does other things while listening to the show. He
Yeah,
already,
right.
he already
I will
said
say-
he was gonna go buy books or whatever. Now he's gonna,
I don't know how to buy on TikTok Shop, and I don't think I ever will. So I'll figure out a different way to
We'll
get
get-
It's
it.
on
we'll get it-
Amazon. You can hit it on
We'll
Amazon.
get you settled, Danny. We'll get you settled in the break. But with that, we are going to take a quick break. I'm going to put up a quick little image here. We're all going to get up and stretch our legs, maybe go get some more water. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about the last year of IRCB, 400 episodes, what all that means. Nick and I are going to reminisce about some early times. Since Danny and Zach are new, we're going to see, what they know. We're going to do a little guessing game. It's going to be fun, but we'll be back in just a second. We're back. It's episode 400. I fixed the screen on Twitch. For those of you live, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone else, sorry, you missed it. But before we get into it, I want to say, reminder, as always, you can follow us on the internet, on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, technically, Discord. We've got a Goodreads. We've got a YouTube channel. We're trying to be active on some of those platforms, except for Twitter. So follow us on the internet. You can see all sorts of clips and other things about the show, things that we've got going on. Sometimes we do announcements. I made a really cool promo for today's episode using the very specialized art that I'm going to show off later in this episode. So make sure, if you're on Twitch, it'll be here. If you're listening to this on your podcast player of choice, you should be able to see it in the app. If you can't, give me a call on the IRCB email, ircbpodcast@gmail.com. I'll answer all of your phone calls through email. And as always, you can follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/IRCB podcast to get access to the hundreds of episodes that we have on Patreon that include the Saga of Saga series, where we go through every single issue of Saga, issue by issue, and now volume by volume. A Better Batmobile, where Paul breaks down Grant Morrison's Batman series, as well as some of the other books and comic books that influence Grant Morrison's run on Batman. We've got a book versus book series. We've got Mike's X-Men Blind Box series. We've got so much stuff on there. IRCB Movie Club, which just hit its 4-year anniversary. We're going to talk about a little bit later. So much stuff on there. Giant Days of Our Lives, everything. That's at patreon.com/IRCB podcast. But now let's get into the show. I'm sorry, I just ate a whole handful of peanut M&Ms before I came back on here, so I apologize if I'm just picking weird peanuts out of my mouth the entire time we're sitting here. But I do want to announce we have picked officially 2 movies for the IRCB Movie Club number 17 that is dropping at the end of next month. But I want to figure this out here live on Twitch, since we had a tie in our votes. We had 3 movies that we were going to pick. The 2 that remained, since this month we're going to be talking about a different angle of things. We usually pick a comic book based movie. This month we're trying something different. We're picking a movie that is comic book adjacent. And so we picked RoboCop 2 from 1990, because this was written by Frank Miller of Sin City and 300 fame. And then we also picked King of Comedy from 1982, starring Robert De Niro, directed by Martin Scorsese, which is basically the influence for the Joker movie. So here live on Twitch, I want folks to cast their vote live. Which of those 2 books or movies should we watch for IRCB Movie Club number 17? Post your choice in the chat. It's either RoboCop 2 or King of Comedy. I'm going to let people hear that, and then we're going to move on to talk about something else. The IRCB listener survey that we did, if you're a longtime listener of IRCB podcast, that's this show, you may have seen that we did a listener survey where we had a bunch of people write in, give us some feedback about the show. That closed yesterday night, technically this morning because I forgot to close it, but we had 68 responses, which is incredible.
Nice.
Over 70% of those were spam. Which was very fun. So we got responses like, why do you like this show? And they responded, blood curdled. And I said, okay, that's not a real person. But we did have some winners. We did offer a $25 gift card or donation to a charity of your choice. And so of those responses that we got, picked 3 people randomly through a randomized generator, and the winners for those for the listener survey to get those gift cards or whatever you want, we'll figure that out through email afterwards. Shane, aka Avocado Kenobi, Matt D, and Joe F, you are our official IRCB podcast listener survey winners. We'll figure things out in the details over email where you want your money to go, whether through a gift card or donation of your choice. But congratulations. You are fantastic human beings. Thank you so much for taking the survey and giving us feedback. Thank you to everyone else who gave us feedback about where we can take the show, how we can improve it, all that stuff. We really, really appreciate it. But yeah, I guess looking at the chat right now, we've got 2 votes for King of Comedy. Maybe I'll give it a couple more minutes. You got RoboCop 2 or King of Comedy, your pick. Please get your voice in now. But Danny, you got some thoughts here?
Oh, I just picked King of Comedy so I can just rewatch Joker 2019 in preparation for Joker 2, Folie à Deux, or whatever. Listen.
Folie à Deux. Wasn't that a Fall Out Boy album?
That's Fall Out Boy album. That's the one that followed
right.
Infinity on High. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the one with the teddy bear on top of it.
That's why it's a musical. That's why the movie's a musical, because they named it after a Fall Out Boy album.
That makes sense.
I bet some people that actually know about art, they know what Folie à Deux actually means and what both things are referencing, and they're probably yelling.
It's a psychological condition. It's shared psychosis.
Oh, well, there you go.
It's the idea that one person has a psychotic episode and actually transmits it to someone else. Although I'm sure there's plenty of people with qualified degrees out there will say that I'm butchering this topic, but guys, I looked it up on Wikipedia once for 30 seconds, okay?
That's the basic gist, yeah.
It makes
Folly
sense. That's
Two.
why Harley's in the film. Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
Genius.
I mean, if it's based on the Fall Out Boy album, that would be really good because they were definitely completely high on their own supply for that fucking album. Boy, God, if you forgot that album, go look it up.
I like that album though, Nick.
I mean, I do too, but it's also so self-important is what that album. Anyway, let's rank the Fall Out Boy albums now.
No.
Let's rank them all.
Welcome to the I Listen to Fall Out Boy podcast.
Yes, finally.
Would that be the worst thing?
Well,
I mean, if you cut it off after the first 4 albums or something.
I don't know. I mean, I would agree with that, but no, we've got some other stuff I want to talk about. This is the 400th episode of the show. I had to get that other stuff out of the way. I want people to vote in the chat, please. We'd appreciate it. We'll announce a winner shortly after this. But as this year moves, thank you, Final Neil, for your vote. Of RoboCop 2. RoboCop 2's got 1. King of Comedy is at 2 right now. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, so we hit 400 episodes. We had a massive year here at I Read Comic Books. I don't know if you guys have any particular moments that maybe stood out that were interested to you. But one of the big things for me that was really cool this year was the Transformers journey that I went on, where I watched all of the Transformers movies and then read a bunch of random Transformers comics so we could do a 2-part series leading up to Transformers #1. That was a transformative experience for me and made Michael Bay the most watched director that I had this year on Letterboxd, or last year I should say. So totally ruined my entire movie stats for the year, but I think it was all worth it because I got to actually experience all of the Transformers in all of their grotesqueness, including that little robot butler whose name I can't remember, and probably for a good reason. Cogman.
Hey, that's one of our most watched YouTube shorts. All right.
Clearly, it was that memorable.
I mean, have you seen The Last Night? It's not a memorable movie.
I will say,
like when you told me you were gonna do this, I was like thinking, like you are truly Dante traversing the the levels of hell.
I will say some good came out of that because it made me reevaluate some of the films, and one of the ones that I thought I
you were gonna say your life.
Am I a transformer? Yeah, there's a transformer in all of us. No, but the third film, I remember for some reason that I hated it, and it turned out to be one of my favorite ones from Michael Bay. They're still not as good as the newer ones, but yeah. So that it was, and I had never seen The Last Night, so at least now I have. Yeah, and I guess that will count at some point when I die, and I'm looking through my life stats in heaven. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, when they bring up the big Rolodex of like what you accomplished in your life.
Heaven wrapped.
Heaven wrapped. Thank you, Nick. Way better idea than what I was thinking. Well, yeah, that was a fun moment. I don't know. I appreciate it. We had Kev from the Austin Danger Pod come on, and we did a whole discussion about Beast Wars. And last night I think was a lot of the discussion. But the fact that we came to the conclusion that the Transformers movies aren't wholly bad, they're just kind of bad and mostly bad, was a nice moment. I don't know. I don't know if you guys had anything else you wanted to bring up for the rest of the year, because I got a whole list here, and I'll just keep talking.
Now we can keep going through your list. I have something, but we can save it. It's
you've got that's true. Well, let's see. So we had 13 guest episodes this past year, which is pretty crazy. Usually do 4 to 5 to 6 a year. In this past year, we did 13 episodes. One of those episodes included our good friend Zach, who then I like talking to Zach so much. I was like, we got to bring you into the fold. I really want to have you to be part of this community. And we had that episode that we did this year. It was really, really fun. We also had Ed Brubaker on this year. That's just a small thing. Couldn't believe that it happened. We had that was a thing that I don't know, happened out of the blue. His people got in contact with our people, aka me, and we made things happen. And it was a really fun episode. It's probably one of the best episodes we've recorded. I hit checked a milestone, and I'm glad that I didn't spend the entire time just fanboying I read this. What happened when you did this? What were you thinking when you did that? We didn't turn it into that Chris Farley sketch where I basically just go, remember when you wrote Daredevil and then he went to jail? Yeah, I could have just done that.
What
the
was
entire
that like?
So, yeah, what was that like? So that was quite an achievement. We had me and Paul on that episode. It was really fun, especially getting an advanced review of where the body was. And we had a bunch of other people on to talk about Kickstarters, throughout the year. And I really hope that helped, spur some excitement for those books, because a lot of them were really, really good, if not all of them. And so yeah, I don't know. I thought that was a pretty cool achievement for this year. We did more guest episodes than we had months in the year, and I feel like that's an interesting combo to put in with our thing. And I know it kind of goes back and forth with our listeners on whether or not those episodes are exciting or not, but I was very happy with them overall.
I love the guest episodes. They are so much fun to talk to people that are in the industry, and because I feel on probably everyone on a different level would like to maybe make a comic book, like all of us. But obviously, there are limitations to our talent. So instead, we just kind of talk about them, right? But yeah, that was really cool. It's really cool to see how they're a community themselves. I just kind of also love when creators talk about other creators, because I find that very fun. because kind of with the same on the Brubaker theme, like it lets you know that, oh, he's just also a fan of this stuff, and that's why he works
Yeah,
in
yeah,
it,
yeah.
That was
right?
cool.
So that's really fun. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. It's one of the interesting things. I think we changed our guest formats up for this past year. Like we made a really conscious effort to say like we wanted to change the way that we did guest episodes in general. Mostly from a combination of like, and I'll get peek behind the producer's curtain here a little bit. You know, it's a combination of like, I don't really know these people and they don't really know me, but the thing that we have in common is comics, right? Either they're writing comics, and 95% of the time, folks that are writing comics have read a lot of comics, and they got into it because of a love of the medium. You know, I'm sure maybe we talked to the guy who worked on Hexagon Bridge, maybe a little different story, hadn't really worked on comics, but I'm sure they were a huge comic book fan, right? And so it's interesting to sit down and get inside of these creators' heads to be like, you know, what are the types of books that you like and the books that you're continuing to read, right? Because a lot of people have a lot of the same backgrounds. Oh, I read the X-Men. Oh, I read Batman. Oh, I read Superman back in the 70s and 80s. You know, I picked up these big collected editions of something and that really sparked things. But
Yeah.
the more important piece is not just like what have you read in the past, but also what are the books that you're following today and you want to keep up with. And, you know, for some people, it's brand new books that are coming out this upcoming week. Other times it's like, oh, I went back and I found, like we had a Bijan on very recently talking about how they were going to read this big collection of Muppet comics. And I'm like, these are the types of things that like I never think about when it comes to what's a backlog book I could read. I usually go to like big two books or even sometimes like Peanuts or whatever, but I forget that like there's this myriad of like weird outside their comic books that were very like solid and firm for people's childhood, but they like don't come to mind immediately of like what type of comics that you could read that are like a proof that like the comics medium is more than just like capes and things like that. And which is why I appreciate like when Kara brings up stuff like the Donald Duck books. And I would never in my life sit to think down and read like comics about Mickey and the gang or, you know, Donald Duck. And yet when I pulled up that Carl Barks Donald Duck book, I'm like, this is peak perfection in comic books. Like there's an artistry to the way that Carl Barks is creating these comics, and it's like reading those books from like collected editions of like EC Comics back in the day, where you're like, these people were putting out comics in a different way than they are now, and that's because the entire industry has changed. You know, there's like that old thing I feel like you would see where people in like the 50s and 60s, and you see this in like a lot of older comics where there's just like, what's your job? Oh, I don't go work in an industry at like an industrial plant. I draw comics, and it's just like your 9 to 5. You get paid like a salary, and that's it. There wasn't like this huge artistry to it, because it was just like another job, like advertising. It was like adjacent to advertising in some ways. And of course, the industry has changed or whatever, but those types of books that were created, massively influential to today's comic book reader, in just the way that they process that the medium, to see like how they did it 50, 60, 70 years ago compared to now. So getting into the heads of the creators to see like what drives them, what got them influenced to make comic books today, and what they continue to look back to, whether that's new comics or old, is always interesting. And I'm very happy with the way that we've changed our the process for how we do creator interviews and discussions, because I love hearing about the comics that they're reading. So yeah, the Ed Brubaker episode was no different than any other creator, and I was so pleased by how it went. So.
It was such a good episode, and I'm with you 100%. There, and this is not a slight on any other podcast, but there are thousands of interviews out there with creators, and there's only so many questions you can ask them. But when you just get to talk, when you talk to them as fans and get to fan with them, it's a very different experience. And I think that is what was really cool about that Brubaker interview, because I listened to him on a couple of different podcasts. They were all good, but this approach was unique, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it, man.
It seems like it's just an easy and simple decision to make, but I think there was still a lot of thought that went into really making interview segments or interview episodes not really turn into, and as Zach said, it's not a slight against other shows, but it is something you see a lot. You know, come on the show. What do you want to plug? What do you want to talk about? Basically, rep all the things that you want to rep, do all the things you want to do. We're just going to give you carte blanche, and it's just a blank check for you to do whatever you want. Sure. And maybe some people get excited about that, but I would suspect that there are some people that are going to either get nervous about the fact that they're now being told you've got 45 minutes to do whatever you want, you better come prepared, or it just sort of encourages them to really just more or less replicate whatever they did on the 3 or 4 other shows that they're doing during their little media circuit of sorts. And
Sure.
so I think it feels like, to me, it was probably easier on us, but I think it's also gotten much better results to say, like, you're going to come on, this is sort of how we structure our show, these are the things that we're going to ask you, like,
Mhm.
we're going to, there are going to be some small expectations in terms of, like, be prepared to talk about what you've been reading. And I think it gives them a more unique experience, and it sort of sets them up with some good prompts to end up with a more unique show for us that we can be proud doesn't look like the other stuff that's out there. And obviously, I think this was maybe the fear in some way, was that we were worried we were going to ask them to do too much with this. But it's
Yeah.
from what I've seen, most guests are receiving this better than
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, I feel like
Um,
we've had pretty like positive reactions from folks, and it's like, how often do you get to talk about comics with a bunch of other comic nerds,
Mhm.
like in like a medium like a podcast like this? I mean, I don't know, we're a pretty cool show, and I think that makes us unique, and I'm glad that it's netted us like such positive outcomes overall. Like, and I hope that other creators that are seeing or hearing this maybe know that's how we do stuff, and it's pretty cool.
Heck yeah.
Yeah,
If I could throw something out, we were
Sure.
talking about like highlights for the year for the show, and
Mhm.
like for me, being brand new to the show this year, the highlight for me was finding this show, listening to it, and because I do my own podcast, cheap
Mhm.
plug, the comics that we love, and I wanted to in 2023, I wanted to branch out and make friends with other comic book podcasts. I was like, I don't want to be an island. This is a community. I want to talk
Mhm.
to everybody. And I started talking to Mike. I was listening to the show, and we decided to kind of work together and do like a, you know, uh, you know, episodes together. And I was going to appear over here on the comic on I read comic books, and it
Mhm.
was such a cool experience, and I had such a great time. And Mike came and did my show, and we talked the Tetris book, and Paul's been on, and Tia's been on, and it's been so much
Yeah.
fun getting to know everybody that's part of this crew and seeing the well-oiled machine that Mike runs in the background, folks, because it really is everybody's got a part that they're playing, and everyone's doing something cool that is building the show. And Mike is like the guy at the front. He's the ringmaster, making sure everything's working.
Yeah.
And it's been a cool experience because when we did that, I just expected our shows would be like pal shows, like pod pals, and we
Mhm.
would appear every once in a while. And then I got invited to be part of it, and that's been a really cool experience to be part of this well-oiled machine that is I read comic books. So thanks for letting me be part of this, everybody of the show.
Yeah, man. No, we're happy to have you.
If you've seen the movie Maestro, Mike is our Bradley Cooper. So there
Totally.
you go.
I imagine myself more as like Xavier with the Krakoan X-Men helmet, but that's fine.
Please
That's
do
fine.
not be Xavier.
That's fine. That's fine.
Please don't.
Yeah, okay, that's true. That's true. But yeah, that's I totally agree, and that's the thing. Like I've appreciated that. Like over the last couple years, we slowed down, we expanded pretty quickly, and then we kind of slowed down. But like we brought you on this year, Zach. We brought on Paloma, Danny. We brought on as well. Pretty recently. Like it's been pretty cool to like grow the show and see how we can like interchange all the different people to like get the conversations moving in different directions. And of course, we all have our different tells and the different things that we like to do on the show. But it's fun to see how those dynamics kind of interact with each other in different ways. And like this upcoming year, we're going to be doing a lot of really interesting stuff. In general, we're kind of changing up some of the business. We'll talk about it more in the future, about how we're potentially changing things and like some other stuff that might be coming down the road. Again, I'm really excited to see like how we're going to continue to like integrate other people and integrate folks in general. And again, I think the thing that I'm envious of you with your show, Zach, not to make this about comics that we love, but is like your connections to a lot of other podcasts is something that I've always like envied and wanted to do. So I think like this upcoming year, definitely want to try to reach out with that and do more of that. And like Matt Burbridge, good buddy of the show, most recently sent me a DM and bragged to me that he now has more followers than us on TikTok, which I won't stand for. So this upcoming year, we're basically going to be fighting Matt Burbridge to death on TikTok.
Wow.
So get ready for that this year. I don't know how that's going to happen, but there's a chance that I may drive up to the far north where he lives and fist fight him, and then his dogs will kill me. So I don't know. We'll see how that works. But that's something like we're looking to do this year. It'll be kind of fun. I can say for like upcoming things, we definitely are like changing up our show in general from a naming perspective. I Read Comic Books is still going to be the name of the show, but we are going to drop episode numbers this upcoming year, which is scary for some people, myself included. But it also is like from the aspect of like a comic book. If you saw episode 400 on the shelf, are you going to pick that up? Maybe Paul would, because it's an anniversary episode or issue. But everybody else, if you see episode 406, is that intimidating? I don't know. So we're going to get rid of those. Hopefully it'll make our show a little bit more approachable. I feel like I have to formally announce it because I think when that first episode comes out after 400, this will be the last one that we're going to do it on. 401, somebody might say, hey, what episode is this? And I'm going to say, I'll never tell, but you could figure it out if you looked at the feed. I don't know.
You
I'm
don't
excited
know
to
the
do it.
legacy numbering? Come on, man.
Yeah. I'll put the legacy numbering like in a small box on the cover art, but you have to pay attention. Otherwise, you won't know. But I don't know. What other stuff did you guys appreciate about this year? Because again, we've got a whole list here.
I got another highlight for the year. For episode 388, Gambit will show you anything under that trench coat. That was, which
man.
I love. So that was the first time I hosted the show.
Yes,
that's true. Without Mike, like the training wheels came off. It was myself, Tia, and Kate. I had a lot of fun. But going into the show, because I've listened to the show for so long, and now that I've been part of it, like it's a big deal to me. It was a big deal. I was kind of nervous. Like I messaged Mike a few times about some things just to make sure I was getting the details right and prepare the notes. So like. But the fact that you had enough confidence in not just myself, but the three of us to like do a show and get it done and have everything they need, and also that it happened to be kind of like your birthday gift, like
yeah,
that was really cool. So I mean, I appreciate that, and I hope we did a really good job.
Dude, listen, an episode that comes with a title like that means that you nailed it, because that means that Zander found that and put it as one of his recommended titles for that episode. I think I could probably find the list somewhere of other titles that he had, which, not to be nonstop plugging the show, but hey, you're on episode 400. That's what we're going to do. Every week on Patreon, or on the Patreon room that we have on Discord, I do take all of the potential episode titles and drop those in there. And I think that episode had like 6 or 7. And that Gambit one was the one that I thought was the funniest. And the other ones were hilarious as well. So like, I'm just saying, you guys talked about Gambit and you made it a good time. I mean, that's a win-win scenario for me as someone who loves this show, but also like you guys did it for my birthday, which is very nice.
I gotta tell you, I was the proof listener for that show, and it was so hard to not be on it because it was so much fun, and I was sitting here laughing my ass off at like Tia describing 90s Gambit hair and clothing was just fucking destroying me. It was it was one of my favorite episodes of the year for the show. It was such a good time. Even having proof listened, I went back and listened to it again when it dropped. It was so good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. This is the thing. This is what I love about the show, is as much of a control freak I feel like I am about the show and everything about it and all the aspects and pieces of it. It is nice that when needed or when I choose to or whatever, usually it's the former, I can step back and I can hand the show off to 3 or 4 of you, and it will come out as neat and tidy as an episode that I was on, if not better. Because what's fun is that when we get other folks hosting the show, and Paul stepped in a lot for me over the years, which has been great, and other people have stepped up as well. And those episodes are chaotic and fun in different ways than an episode that I'm running, because I feel like when I'm hosting, there's like a certain like, we're gonna do things this way, whereas when other people are hosting, they definitely take a little bit more of a bend with it, and I appreciate that, because every once in a while, maybe the show does need to be shaken up. And so it's fun to hear those episodes and go, oh, damn, how can I make future episodes as fun as that was to listen to? I think my episodes are fun enough, but still, there's always room for improvement, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Uh, I don't know. I could say more about that, but the other thing that I'm very excited for this year, or that I was excited that we hit this year, was we hit 4 years of the IRCB Movie Club, which, again, another plug. Remember to vote in the chat right now. RoboCop has 2 votes, and King of Comedy is or RoboCop has 1 vote, and King of Comedy has 2 votes. But we hit 4 years, which is awesome. And of course, as a 4-year celebration for us having done that series on Patreon, we did finally sit down and watch the movie that Paul wanted to watch from the beginning, which was American Splendor. And, that was a movie that I'm very glad that I finally sat down to watch, because it to me was one of those like, oh, this is going to be way too in your head comic book bullshit. And it turned out to be like one of the coolest movies I'd seen in a very long time, to the point where I went out immediately after that and bought like 3 volumes of what's his name's work, whose name I'm going to say Harvey Kurtzman. Is that the name? I have to furiously Google it. But yeah, I went out and bought a bunch of his, no, not Harvey Kurtzman. It doesn't matter. I went out and bought all those books that Paul Giamatti played the guy from. And, and it was great. And I'm very happy to have actually exposed myself to that kind of slice of life comics that probably inspired like an entire generation of people to tell comics that were just about their lives. And I'm pretty sure Paul was pleased about, us actually finally watching that.
Harvey Picar. Yeah,
I knew Harvey was right. Okay, thank you, Harvey Picar. Thank you, Final Neil. I appreciate that. You got it in the chat too. So, bought a bunch of Harvey Picar comics and have yet to read all of them, but I've read some and they're good. Because I knew it was going to be good because I really liked American Splendor. But that was an achievement because like we've been doing that show every 3 months for 4 years. It's like we just keep stacking up all of this cool shit, whether it's on the main feed or on Patreon. Like so many things for us to be proud of. Paul's been running that show and he's been running the Better Batmobile. It's incredible. Paul basically makes our Patreon content amazing. So go check it out. But yeah, it was an achievement. I'm very excited that we finally got to do that movie.
I'm always a little hesitant to get into some of that stuff like American Splendor or what's the Scarlett Johansson movie, Ghost World. Like because sometimes some of those Gen X writers, they get a little bit up in like their own BS.
Sure.
And I'm not always a fan of that. Like I was definitely not a big fan of Ghost World, even though I know a lot of people love it. I believe it might be Paul's favorite comic. I think I don't know. So Paul, don't hate me.
Paul's favorite comic is Love and Rockets. Come on,
yeah,
that's
true.
Definitely Love and Rockets.
It's just not my jam. So, but I'm glad you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah,
and yeah, I love the movie club because I love movies and I love watching movies about comics, and this just gives me an excuse to revisit some stuff. So that's been a lot of fun to follow throughout these 4 years.
Yeah, the one other thing that I will say for this upcoming year, like I feel like we talk about a lot of the people on the show pretty regularly because that's everyone's part of the show, makes the show who they are. We are finally, after 8 years, we're going to be doing a panelist series of I Read Comic Books, where we're going to go in reverse chronological order of when people joined the show to talk about them. So we're going to do like episodes where we just focus on that person's interest. Maybe we'll read a book that they really, really love. Maybe we'll just poke and prod them and ask them questions about what kind of stuff they're into that maybe is or is not related to comics. It's going to be really, really fun. And it's funny enough because next week's episode is going to be all about Zach. And then after that, we're going to be going in reverse chronological order from when people join the show. I'm going to probably make some fun special show art for those episodes along with whatever books or whatever we talk about. But it'll be really, really cool. And I'm really excited to talk about everybody on the show. So we're going to try to do one of those like every 4 or 5 weeks, depending on how the schedule lines up. And more to come on that as we get things announced. And as always, another plug for Patreon. We do these monthly schedule updates or IRCB monthly updates where I kind of just lay out what's on the land for IRCB for the upcoming month. You get access to like what our Patreon schedule is going to look like, what our public feed's going to look like, plus whatever other events we may have going on. So, yeah, if you're not on Patreon, what are you doing with your time? But it's really exciting that we're going to be doing that because I'm excited to talk to Zach, and I'm also excited to, at some point down the line, and I know Zander's going to edit this episode, and he's going to say no out loud in his house. We are probably going to try to talk to Zander at some point, and I think I'll edit that episode. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, eventually we're going to talk to everybody on the show. It'll be, I think the last 3 will be Nick and Paul, and then Zander and then me. I don't know how we're going to handle it, but we'll do it. It's going to be really, really fun. But that's like a 2025 problem because we've got way too many people on the show.
It'll have to be like the Steve Brule episode where he like interviews his brother, and it's just him playing both.
Oh yeah, I'll
we'll
ask...
just have you on both sides.
Yes. What I'll probably do is I'll just record a bunch of pre-recorded answers, and then I'll put a TV right next to me, and then every time I need to answer a question, I'll just use a remote or something. That'll be fun. Again, 2025 problem for me.
I love it.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. This past year has been really cool. It's been interesting to see how we've been able to like break out a lot of responsibilities internally. I don't know. That's like a really, really interesting thing for me. I asked for like a big hand of help earlier this year just because I was kind of struggling keeping the entire thing together, which resulted in like a lot of really cool stuff happening. Like Danny took over basically running our YouTube channel. Kate took over running our Instagram account and generating a bunch of really cool stuff that we've been posting on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. And it's been really fun to like have the three of us, plus we've got a couple of other people involved, just playing around with goofy stuff that we potentially could do on social media. And I know that that's not like a super fun, cool thing to talk about on a comic book podcast, but it's been fun to like see how we fit in the greater, grander scheme of like the internet as a show, because I think we're very much off the beaten path for a lot of people. I think a lot of our survey results have shown that people come to us for like non-standard recommendations for comics, and that's like a huge point of pride for me to know that we're able to give people recommendations about comic books that they maybe wouldn't have heard of, versus I think a lot of other podcasts, no offense to Zach and Danny here, love your guys' shows, but well, no, but you guys, it's other shows in general, maybe we'll be talking about whatever the hottest book is, right? And we aren't necessarily that show all the time, right? Like I would love to be talking about God's Number 4, but man, I just don't subscribe to Marvel books anymore. So I'm on that MU delay, and there's no way I'm talking about the latest Marvel books. I'm sorry. I really want to read Ultimate Spider-Man, but I will not bring myself to buy it digitally. So I'm just going to wait for the subscription, in a couple of months when it'll eventually get there. So
it's so fucking good.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
But, hey,
I've heard so many things.
If anybody at Marvel's watching, send those review copies. We'll talk about your books if you send those review copies.
I would gladly talk about all of the Marvel books if they comped us those books. But who knows? I gotta get on the phone with CK Cebul, whatever the hell his name is. Tom Brevoort, CB Cebulski.
I think Mickey Mouse runs that now. Yeah, Mickey Mouse.
Oh yeah, I'll get on me and Walt. I'll get on the phone with Walt's frozen head. This is definitely how you get Marvel to send you comps, right?
Not Steamboat Willie though. He doesn't work there anymore.
Right. We're gonna start making all of the IRCB branded merch is just gonna be Steamboat Willie based.
Nice.
For 2024. Anyways, I don't know. Danny, did you have another thing you wanted to talk about? Because otherwise, I've got a fun little guessing game that I wanted to get into before we wrap up the show here.
So, Mike, yes. So you were talking about like the old days, and I was trying to think back, like, okay, when did I start listening to the show? And I remember,
age-old question.
Yeah, I've sent emails before, and so I found my first email that I ever sent to. I sent this to the destroythescythe.org email.
Yo.
So This is from August 18, 2017. Now, by then, I had already been listening to the show for a while, probably, but this was the first time that I was like, oh, I should email these guys. And, Mike keeps talking about, like, send emails and stuff. So, I wrote in because you guys asked for a comic book mixtape, which I think it's an idea we should revisit.
Whoa,
looking back at this.
Yeah.
So I sent in a mixtape of Greg Pak books that, you know what? I think I'm going to, we should share this on the Patreon.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a pretty cool list. And I also sent in some messages for like everyone that was kind of on the show at the time. I don't know if Brian and Kate were on the show at the time yet. They might have been, but maybe I hadn't heard as many of their episodes. But yeah, I sent in a little blurb about everyone and kind of why, and I talked about Mike and his love of the X-Men and about how much you care about the podcast. I sent a message for Zander about being a wizard because even back then that was a thing. This is when Nick was really hot on Valiant stuff. So like, that's kind of what I talked to him about.
Oh yeah.
And then Paul with the wrestling and Batman, like that's been his bread and butter since day one. And then also for Tia, because Tia really brought a different perspective to what I like, even comics in general, just like appreciating comics. So that was really cool. And also for Kate, because I think at the time she was running most of the Goodreads stuff.
Yeah.
And then Renee, because he was the manga expert. So yeah, like reading back the email, the one thing I do love is that at the end I did say, "P.S. If you ever need a special guest." So even
I
from
mean,
back then, even back then.
But then later we did have you on. I mean, like
Yeah.
I had to go through. I went through and I found everybody's first episode that we're
Yeah.
gonna do for those episodes in the future. We had you on as a guest
That's right.
for the manga episode we talked about Dragon Ball, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
So
it was cool, man.
even back then, I was trying to weasel my way into the show. And look at that.
And here you are.
It only took
Here you
6
are.
years for me to run one of the shows.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, this was a lot of fun. So I think we should definitely do the mixtape thing again, because just
Yeah.
looking at the list, like it's really cool, and we've known so many more creators now, from them, that it'd be a really cool topic, I think.
Man, that is bringing me back, this idea of like the comic book mixtape. Oh my gosh. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that offline, Danny. Don't worry. Okay. Well, to wrap up the show here, I want to do a quick thing. It looks like we have a winner for the IRCB Movie Club. It's going to be King of Comedy. I'm very excited to watch that movie again because it's awesome. But it'll be fun to talk about with Brian and Paul in February. So we're gonna say King of Comedy is our winner from 1982. And for those of you watching on Twitch, if you're listening live, I'm sorry, but those of you watching on Twitch, we're gonna do a little guessing game. I asked everybody in the IRCB group to send me their best rendition of the IRCB logo. And so I got a bunch of pictures from a bunch of people, and I want you guys to go through. You all know the list of folks on the show. Tell me who drew these photos. So I'm going to share my screen here, and sorry again on Twitch. I don't know why we're getting these weird layouts, but I can't control it. But still, you should be able to see these photos. So we're going to start with this. We're going to get it out of the way. We're going to start with this one right here. Who do you think drew this photo?
Oh, that's cool.
We got to do rapid fire answers here.
Tia.
Okay. Nick.
Danny.
Okay. Danny, who drew this?
I did. That's why I
Danny
didn't
drew
chime
this.
Oh. I dig it.
Hell yeah. It's beautiful. For those of
Tia's
you who are listening, we're gonna post links to all these in the show notes, I promise. But
guessing Tia is both a compliment and a good guess, I think.
Yeah. All right, so that was Danny's. Let's look at the next one. Here. We've got this one right here. Who do you think drew this? Who do you think made this? They intentionally kept the file names weird and numbered so that you wouldn't know who they were.
I want to say Paul.
Okay. Zach?
I'm gonna go Renee.
Okay. Nick?
I'm gonna go Kate. Kait.
Kate Lamphere. You're all wrong.
Oh.
Oh shit.
The answer is Paloma.
Oh.
Paloma did this one. Yeah, you guys can't forget about Paloma. Come on, what are you guys doing? Let's move on to the next one. I've got a nice one here. Very well drawn with I think colored pencil. Let's go across the board. Let's start with Danny. Who do you think drew this one?
Kate Lamphere did this one, I think.
Okay. Zach, what do you think?
That was the name that was popping to me too, so I'm gonna go same. Kate Lamphere.
Okay. Nick?
Yeah. I don't really know if I can make a convincing case for anyone else on this. I would say Lamphere.
You guys are unbelievable. This was
Wrong again.
This was Kate Lamphere.
Oh,
you guys
nice.
nailed it. Oh man.
You know what it was? The attention to detail and the care that they put into this picture. It screams Kate. So Kate.
There was a real orderliness, I think, to it.
You know what? This makes me think that I should have done this one next. Or should have done this one first, because I might have thrown you here. You know that this isn't Kate, but this is someone else.
Okay.
Who do you think it is?
Okay.
We're gonna start with Nick. Who do you think this is?
Gosh, I wish and I realize, I mean, the game would, I don't know. I don't know. There are different ways to do this. Now I know who isn't, but I know who's left. That said,
I was gonna go a more complicated way, show you
Yeah,
all the
that's
photos
okay.
and have you assign it.
Yeah.
That's not fun. This is way
This
more
is
fun.
more fun, but now it's like, if we're trying to game it or whatever, but it's like, who cares?
Nick's all about winning right now.
Yeah,
You've been playing
yeah,
Magic too much.
I've been playing Magic for a couple weeks, and now I just, no.
All right, Nick, I'm skipping you. Danny, who do you think this is?
I'm gonna say Zach.
Okay.
I'm gonna say
you
Zach.
say Zach. Danny, who is this?
I'm gonna say Paul.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Zach, who do you think this is?
Brian.
You guys are all wrong.
Fuck, really?
This was Kara Shimborski, our good friend.
I guess I
Kara.
should point out the fact that I'm like, gosh, Mike, it's too bad that like every time we do one, you rule one out, but we still fucking suck
do
at this, so it doesn't even matter.
You know
Listen,
what?
I knew this was going to be a challenge, and I'm so happy about it right now.
You know what threw me? The little fist at the bottom. I was like, oh, that seems like a kind of wrestling thing. That might be Paul. That's what threw me at there. The little magazine thing at the bottom.
I'm going almost only on
God
hearing
damn.
a lot of these people talk on the podcast and what little I know about personalities from that, because there's some people I haven't met yet, like fully. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so this like meticulous. Okay, yeah, we could do this.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, Riverside is not letting me share my screen anymore, so I think that's where we have to end the
Oh.
game.
Oh,
I did have let me see what else I had. That was Danny's, that was Kara's, that was Paloma's. I did have one more, and honestly, I wish that I wanted to be able to show the episode. Oh wait, we're back.
Sweet.
We're back. Okay, we're back.
Okay.
I do have one more.
Okay.
I have one more. This person, you know what? Actually, no, I don't have more than one more. That's not true. All right, let's do this. We're gonna say, who is this one? Who drew this one?
I want to say, this feels very Brian.
Yeah. Okay. Nick, who do you think drew this one?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Brian sounds good.
Okay.
Brian sounds good. I was going back and forth between Brian and Renee, but I think more Brian.
Okay. Zach.
The last time we were all in the same boat, it was right. I'm gonna go Brian.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cute because it was Renee.
That was the. So I knew it was one of them too.
Well, okay, we're gonna, I realized that we're gonna maybe have to clip this from the entire audio episode. I'm just gonna say that, but I do want to show one last thing. I'll show one last thing before we wrap here, and that is the episode 400 art. I don't think anybody has fully seen this outside of the show. I don't remember if I sent this or not. Regardless, here is the episode 400 art.
So cool.
It's maybe one of the coolest things we've ever had commissioned, and I'm sorry, people on Twitch, it just doesn't look right. You're gonna see this as part of the show. It's really, really cool. Look at your podcatcher; it's very, very nice. We commissioned a cover for this episode from our good pal Flynn Nichols, who's done all of the avatars for the show, so the art kind of looks similar. But it's a very big, huge, cool mech where I'm piloting, and all the rest of the IRCB folks are standing on the roof of this building as this mech is bursting from it. It's maybe one of the coolest pieces of art that we've ever gotten for IRE comic books.
That is awesome.
And that's saying something because one time Danny drew me at the Louvre. So that's something years old thing.
It's in the first zine if I'm not mistaken.
It is. It very much is. But it's a really cool cover. I hope you check it out. We'll put a link to like the full size one. We'll post this on Patreon and stuff. But it's really, really cool. Can't thank Flynn enough for doing this. Such a fantastic job with this. But yeah, I think thank you guys for doing the guessing game. I hope that was fun. I hope everyone at home enjoyed that. Those of you on Twitch who watched it live. But I guess I don't know. Any last thoughts before we wrap up here, guys? This is the longest episode in IRCB history.
I mean, Mike, I don't know how you have been doing this for so long, but congratulations, man. Like being a part of it is really cool, but even just as a listener, like I listen to this weekly, whether I'm in the show or not. I do love listening to myself, but I also really enjoy the shows that I'm not on.
Sure.
So yeah, dude, it's great. It's just the people that you have assembled here. This is like some end game level like rosters of people, right? So congratulations, and I am very excited for whatever's to come in the future for this podcast and everything else that we're doing. So very excited for this year as well.
Yeah, Hell yeah. Well, Danny, that's the perfect send-off for the episode. I appreciate that, man. It's been an incredible ride. I want to say sorry to Zander in advance for this long episode, but 9 years of the show or 8 years of the show, hitting the 9th anniversary is crazy. Here's to like 9 more. I don't know if I even want to wish that on myself. But this show is nothing without the rest of you. That is the thing. Like everybody who's listening, the folks on the show, folks who have participated in the show, all of the guests, everybody, the show does not exist without the rest of you. So thank you for that. Obviously to Zander, this is my Oscar speech. The music hasn't yet to start playing. Maybe that's going to happen in the actual edited version, but this show doesn't exist without Zander either. So we want to say thank you to Zander, and thank you to everyone who's contributed over the years. Thank you to my wife for letting me do this every Sunday for 9 years, 8 years straight, which is crazy. But yeah, it's fantastic stuff. And I really appreciate all the time and effort and energy that everyone's put in for listening and being a part of the community that we have, all the wonderful folks on Discord. Let's at least get through 2024. I'm very excited for what we have coming down the line and beyond. So next week's show is going to be great. It's the first panelist episode. Zach's coming back. It's going to be me and Zach and Paul talking about Zach. That's it. We're going to see who even the hell this guy is. His first episode was 378, and we're moving on to another 100 or 200. We'll see. So it's going to be fun. Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all of our music. Can't thank them enough for their years of wonderful music. Go check out their latest EP where they re-recorded a bunch of their old songs in like their more modern style. It's amazing. Zander is just a small alien piloting a large human mecha. He also is our editor of our show. I want to say thank you again to Zach and Nick and Danny, Paul for proof listening, everyone out there listening. First time chat, Toad1, thank you for joining us in the last minute of our show. Until next time, comics are good, and so are you.